Hello, Ted here from Whole Latte Love. I have a Gaggia Accademia here, and we are going to show you how to clean and calibrate or replace your grinder if you're having grinding problems.
And Ted, I gotta say, you've probably done more of these than anybody maybe in the world, right?
Yeah, I know a lot of these machines like the back of my hand.
All right, what do we gotta do?
All right, so what we gotta do is we gotta remove the top of this machine, and it's just one big panel with these things that are attached to it. So the first thing you need to do is you need to take out your water tank. If it's empty, full or whatever, be careful, empty it out if you need to, but you just need to set it off the side. Remove your bean hopper lid, just kind of get that out of the way. Now I will, before I go too far, I'd like to mention, because we're gonna remove the top of this machine, keep track of where your dial is at the moment. The only reason you need to is if you're cleaning and calibrating the grinder, you got to make sure that dial is in the correct spot when you put the lid back on.
So know where that is before you take it off.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to remove this lid. And one thing that you need to do before taking the top of the machine off is this yellow flap here that tells you your tank is missing. Is a spring-loaded mechanism, and the spring is underneath here, and it's a little tiny guy, and it's very hard to get that thing dislodged and lose it. So the trick is to tape this flap down inside.
Okay.
That'll prevent it from going anywhere. You don't have to worry about it or anything like that. You can use like painter's tape or the same kind of tape I use. Don't use like masking tape or like packing tape or anything like that. It'll be really sticky and nasty to get off.
Okay.
So the first thing we got to do is we got to remove 4 screws, 2 on either side, 1 here and here, and then the same thing on the other side underneath the other lid. So we're going to remove these screws, and the tool is a T10 screwdriver, Torx bit. If you have a magnetic one, that'd be nice to have. If not, it's not a big deal because you're not doing too much where you're going to have to fight with getting the screw out. The older the machine is, the more difficult it might be to get these 2 screws over here out because of water that might have gotten onto them, discolored them, eroded them a little bit. You might have to struggle with that a little bit, but for the most part, these screws come right out. If you plan on using a power tool, I would recommend only using it, removing the screws, not installing the screws back in, because you can strip the screw holes.
Don't want to do that.
And that won't be good. So we're going to start with this side here. There's 2 ways of doing this. There's the way that there's a slot right here in front of my finger. If you have like a hook or something with a bend on it, you can push on it and it'll free the tab up that's inside of here. The way I do it is I grab both hands like this on this whole ridge right here, and I kind of tweak it and pull up at the same time.
Okay.
You can see it popping up. It's just one little tab.
That was pretty easy.
Yeah. And then after you do that, you're going to grab both of these lids, but be careful not to put too much torque on them because you can break the hinge arms. And you're going to lift it up, wiggle it out, and then lift it up. And then you got 3 cables that are attached to this lid.
Okay.
This one is for your heat tray for your cups. You just pull it off. Back here is a ground connection. It's got a little tiny prong right in the middle here. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah, I think so.
But you got to push down on that prong and then pull the connector back.
To get it to release?
Yeah, you see that little prong right there?
Yep.
You push on that and then you can pull the connector off.
Okay.
After that, you got a bean hopper sensor. It just pulls out of that slot right there that it sits in. And now you have the whole top free. So we can put those doors down and set this off to the side. Now we're at the top of the machine, where the only thing that's up here is your grinder assembly and of course your water tank holder. This is where we're going to go after. So the first thing you got to do is you got this rubber cover that's over this whole thing. There's only 2 screws. They got slots for 4 screws, but they only have just 2. So you got this one here, and then you got one over here to remove. So you're going to remove the screws. Again, T10. Pretty much every screw on this machine is a T10. Very rarely will you see anything else.
Are those like the same sort of screw, the same size and stuff you took out of the other?
Yep, they're identical, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up.
Great.
Also, one other quick thing, make sure your bean hopper is empty before you pull the top off. I didn't even think about that until now, because sometimes you might have a full hopper and will make a mess if you pull the top off, and all the beans will spill out in here. So yeah, clean your bean hopper out before removing the top. So this is just going to lift up off of these little cylinders that this rubber piece sits on. All these little things here just sit on cylinders over here. We got this out of the way, just set it outside. Now we're at the grinder. Make sure your cables are out of your way. So now all you got to do to clean and calibrate the grinder is adjust this thing back. You push it down and you're going to turn your dial at the same time. See that white mark? It's going this way. I'm going to turn it. It's a little bit of a pain, especially if you ain't got a tool to do it. But it will turn every time you push this down. You kind of turn this.
You're just pushing, turning, pushing, turning?
Yeah. I have a tool at my bench. Makes this a little bit easier, but we're showing you how you can do it at home. So now I have these 3 slots to this upper burr holder lined up with 3 openings that are down inside of there.
Okay.
Now that I have it like that, I can wiggle this out and take the burr out. So you got these 3 tabs all the way around that go into these 3 openings.
Okay.
And that's the only way you can remove it. That's why you need to back it out and get them lined up with that. Now that you have it out, you can now clean your grinder out. You can clean the channel between here and your chute and get this all cleared out. And if you have to, clean this up a little bit if there's buildup on here. Sometimes oily beans will cause a caking around here.
Okay.
And get it all cleaned out. And then you're going to reinstall this burr back in. Before we put that upper burr in, we got to clean out the grinder. If you have any, and you're also going to be doing this to clean out your grinder anyway. Best way is to use a vacuum. We're just going to clean it up. Get as much of this out of here as we can.
We got some of those other beans out there too over here?
Oh yeah, if you have any loose ones that get out, just clean up. And of course, on older machines, there might be more debris around in here, and you can just clean up. You can see there's still some grounds in here. If you get a pick, you can pick through here and kind of vacuum it up after you get it picked out. Same thing with the chute over here. You use a pick, you can shove, you just saw the grounds drop in that chute. You can clean that out if there's a blockage in there that's preventing it from working, and just clean it out as best you can.
Is that chute where the clogs will happen often?
What can happen, especially on types of beans that you're using, it will cake up and kind of like just gum up and jam in that chute here, the opening, and won't allow grinds to fall out here anymore. And then the grinder is not able to grind beans and work on shoving it out of there, and it just has nowhere to go.
Okay.
So you'll get, the machine will run and not brew anything, and it might say empty beans or something like that.
Okay.
Because the grinder's going too fast because it can't grind anymore. So once you get it cleaned out, you're going to take your burr and you're going to put it back in. As I mentioned, one of the slots tabs is bigger than the other. You're going to line those 3 tabs up and push it back down in there.
Okay.
Okay. Once you get it down in there, you're going to do the same thing as before. You're going to push down on this tab and you're going to turn it in. And mind you, you got to make sure these tabs are underneath those openings as soon as it starts going in.
Okay.
Okay. So once you get it going in, you're going to keep going.
Takes a little effort, right?
A little bit.
And now how far do you go with this though?
This white line, there's always a white line on these upper burrs.
Okay.
It's always lined up. You can actually kind of see a little paint that was marked here.
Okay.
When they put the line on here. But it always has to be pointing in this general direction, which is your finest grind setting.
So are you all the way there? No, you gotta go a little more.
Nope, I gotta go a little bit more.
Okay.
Basically right there.
Right there.
Okay. If you continue to go this way, eventually the burrs are going to touch. You won't be able to turn it anymore.
Okay.
So you really don't want to go past this point because it'll be way too fine. Your machine will have a hard time grinding. Your brewing won't go as fast, or it'll be
clog easier.
Yeah, it'll be struggling a lot.
Okay.
So this is where your finest setting is, and that's where you want to keep it.
Okay.
All right. So now that we got the burr in there, your grinder's been cleaned and calibrated, and we would replace all this stuff in here, which we can do. But I also want to explain how to replace your grinder in case you have to do that.
Okay, so we'll show how to replace it, but we'll put it back together so folks can see how to do that. Okay, let's replace that grinder.
All right, so the grinder, if you need to replace it, like the motor died or something is broken and you just want to replace the grinder, It's not hard. It's a lot easier than actually taking the burr out.
Okay.
So all you got to do is take and pull this whole grinder assembly up out of the housing here.
That was really hard.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
So we have this rubber piece here that we need to take off
Okay.
and set it off to the side because we're going to reuse that.
Okay.
We have 3 wires attached to it. Well, 3 sets of wires.
Okay.
We have the white and black wire to the motor supplies power to it. So you got the little prong, just like you did on the lid. There's a little prong here. You got to push down and pull back.
Now, do we need to know where these came from when we?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you put these wires on the wrong way, your motor will run in reverse.
That's not good.
And you won't get any grinding happening that way. So the way I always think of it is the black wires, black starts with B, B is on bottom.
Bottom makes sense.
So white on top, black on bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so you unplug both of those wires. And then this is your wire to your sensor to the grinder. This is what tells the machine that it's working.
Okay.
So there's a little plastic clip thingy that kind of covers it and holds it in place just as a precaution. So I use a flat blade screwdriver, get behind it like this, and then just turn.
Okay.
That just frees that clip up so you can slide it off.
Okay.
And just leave it on the wire. Don't lose it. Don't let it fall off. It's not going to fall off unless it comes off the end of it. And you're just going to wiggle and pull back on this little wire connector.
Okay.
Now your grinder is disconnected.
Pretty easy.
Pretty easy. So you can set this aside. Some of the older grinders might look like black soot all around here. And that's just from wear and tear.
And again, if you had some coffee residue down in there, like
Now
I
you
said,
can
bean
even
down
clean
there,
that out.
you can get rid of that
If you do
stuff.
so, make sure you don't vacuum up this spring.
Okay.
Because I've done that.
Okay.
But yeah, so you're going to clean up in here if you want to, if there's a lot of crap built up in there.
So like I see a bean down there, we should probably get rid of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. And this machine is really clean, right?
Yeah,
You
this
take
one
most of
is.
them apart, you're not gonna,
This is not one I'm used to working
Okay.
on. I usually, have more things to worry about when
Sure.
we're cleaning them out. But this is the grinder assembly. When you buy a grinder assembly from us, it comes with all this. Like I said, the only thing I took off before was this other sleeve that goes on here. It doesn't come with that. Now, I will point out, it comes with wires. You don't need to use them.
Okay.
It's more work involved by getting to where the wires connect to, and you don't need to do that because the wires are fine.
Okay.
So I always just disconnect the wires
Save those for a rainy
and
day.
save them for whatever I need to use them for down the road. Pop the clip and pull this wire off,
Okay.
and just kind of toss those out the side.
Okay.
So now all you got to do is reconnect the wires. You're going to take the white connector.
That's going on top, right? If I remember. Oh, this is the sensor
For
one,
the
right?
sensor.
Right.
It's got 3 tiny holes in there. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
They go into those 3 tiny prongs inside of there.
Okay.
So as long as the holes are facing upwards and you line it in here,
I'm assuming that it's only going to go in there one way, right?
pretty much, yeah. I mean, but if
Okay.
you accidentally flip it over and try to shove it in, you're going to break
bend
the
the
little
pin.
prongs in there,
Okay.
little pins. So you get it lined up and you just push it on there. And now it's connected. Then you're going to take this clip, and these 2 prongs need to face on the underside. So you get it started on there like that, and then you're going to push it on.
Push. Okay.
And then you're going to take your wires to the motor.
Now we're back to black on bottom, white on top.
I always connect the bottom one first because, I don't know, it's just easier. And then the white one on top. And then we got to put that little rubber sleeve back on.
Don't forget the rubber sleeve.
And you just kind of just put it on there somewhat. Once you set it in there, the hole will position where it needs to be. And make sure your spring is in here in the upright position.
Okay.
And then all you got to do is line up this rubber sleeve to go onto these 2 pins on either side.
Okay, so you got some corresponding holes in that rubber sleeve.
Yeah,
to
it just
those?
helps hold the motor in place a little bit.
Okay.
So you just move that rubber sleeve around, get it to start, go in there, and now your grinder's in place. Make sure your sensor wires are over here in these like little channels here. Doesn't have to be perfect, and then your wires over here just kind of stick out the back.
Okay.
And then you can just put your rubber cover on. It just sits over top, and you just get these rubber sleeves to go over the collars. And once you get everything in there, Make sure your wires don't get tangled up like that one just did. And now that's on. And we take our 2 screws.
This is the 4 holes, 2 screws part,
4
right?
holes, 2 screws. We get customers that, you know, when they do get in here and they do this kind of thing themselves, they're like, I have 2 screws missing.
Nope.
It's just, I don't know why they did it, but they always have just these 2 screws. They never put 4 in. I don't even know why they made it so they had 4, but it doesn't really need them. It just kind of temporarily holds this rubber insulator over the grinder.
Okay.
So now that you got that in there, we have to put the top back on.
Okay.
Now, with the grinder being at the the finest setting, we have to make sure that this knob
When we put it on is also...
is at the finest setting.
Okay.
So just be mindful of that. But
So
first,
a new grinder like that is going to come
the new grinder is going to be set at the finest setting.
So you don't have to do any calibration or anything like that.
I mean, the way you can know and find out is if this line is facing that
So
part
that
of the
line pointing to that place
the adjuster
is the
thing.
finest.
Yep.
Okay.
If it's way over here, then it's coarse. If it's past that, then it's going to be way too fine.
Okay.
So we got that. Now I'm going to pick up the top like I did before and hold the lids together like this, so I can move this thing around easily. Take the bean hopper sensor,
Yep.
fish it into that opening, and just kind of push it in there.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll click. If not, don't worry about it, as long as it's seated in
Just
there.
make sure it's in there, yeah.
Take your ground wire, connect it to that prong in the back where it was connected before. You're going to line it up on there and slide it up and click it into place.
Okay.
And then the last wire is your heat tray. This one, you got to make sure those 2 metal prongs that are on the bottom side here on either end
Yep.
go against these 2 metal things on the back side of this thing.
Okay.
If you turn it around and connect it this way, your
won't get
cup
heat.
tray won't warm up. So make sure the metal is on metal, basically.
Okay.
And usually I can get it started like just by wiggling it on there. And once I get it started, I take my thumb and I push against this plastic piece over here, and my fingers over here, and push it in.
I heard a click.
Okay.
Okay.
Once you get that in, then you got to work this side of the housing up here. Make sure you're on your finest setting, and wiggle it till it drops in there.
Now, you know from experience, you're on the finest setting, but if I had to take the little thing here just to make sure it's pointing at the finest on that little knob?
I mean, if you turn it this way and it stops, that's at the finest setting.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to double check
kinda
and make sure you can
verify.
place your lid here and it's pointing at the smaller dot.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a stopping point, so if you turn it, it won't go any further.
Okay.
Same with the coarse thing. You turn it the other way, it's going to stop there too.
Okay.
But yeah, so we place that side in, get it to drop in. At the same time on this side, sometimes this cable will pop out through this opening.
Okay, so make sure.
Just when you get that side in, before you start to place this side down, push that in there if it pops out. It does it sometimes. I've seen it many a times. But once you get that cable in there, you just kind of push it down.
Wow, that's easy.
And so everything's seated back in. You take your 4 screws and put these back in. Again, if you use a power tool, don't do it when you're putting the screws back in, because you can strip the holes that these go into because they're only plastic. You hit a stopping point once you're...
Yep.
Don't go any further than that.
Okay.
Get that one in.
I'll bet you've seen a lot of crazy things repairing machines.
Yeah. I have seen every now and then I get a new thing where I'm like, I thought I'd seen everything.
And I know you like taking pictures that come in of the number of drinks machines have made.
Yeah. The Academias, I've had some machines where they've made like 20, 30,000 different kinds of combined drinks that this thing can make.
That's awesome.
So now we got the top on, you can pull your piece of tape off the
That
flap
little
here,
yellow guy there, okay.
and then you're all set. And now you can run your machine. It might take a few, like 2 or 3 shots to get that grinder filled up if you've replaced it. Even after you clean it, you still need to fill it up until you get a good, decent size espresso.
Pull a few shots, right, before you start saying, what's
so
going on.
run a few, make sure it works, everything. If you had problems before and it went away, then you're good to go.
All right, Ted, thanks so much for taking us through that on the Academia.
You're welcome.